Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. I'm doing a wee bit of a reading check-in of stuff that I have been reading recently. It's been a little bit scattershot all over the place whether I have actually enjoyed reading the books or not. But I've been having a pretty good time reading recently. I did go on a camping trip where I finished one book, and that was Poet Warrior by Joy Harjo. This is a memoir that she wrote. She is an Indigenous former poet laureate of the United States, or I guess maybe it's poet laureate emeritus, because it's not like you get fired from that job. And this was pretty good. I gather that she has actually written a previous memoir, and I think this was kind of a continuation and a follow-up to that memoir. So I think that it would have been interesting to read the two in conversation with each other. But it was good, it was well written, it was pretty much exactly what I expected from her and her poetry. I finished reading a book called 13th Night, which was a little paperback cozy mystery type thing that is supposed to be a reimagining of some of the characters from Shakespeare's Twelfth Night and the made up version of a guild of fools that are all of the fools in Shakespeare's plays and in other works of literature throughout that time period that are basically like spies that go around solving mysteries. I really think that this would have worked better as just a spy story. I don't think it needed to be a murder mystery in order for it to be a good book. And in some cases that actively hampered the story's success, in my opinion. It just was something that didn't really hang together super well. And I think another part of that is because there are fictional characters in it whose stories are definitely brought to a conclusion at the end of the play in real life. And then that gets reopened for the sake of a murder mystery. So that didn't really work for me too much. The other book that I read that really I just did not like at all was A Death in Brittany, which is another cozy mystery. I listened to it on audio. This was for the mystery book club that I'm a part of, and I did not like this book at all. It was cozy to the point of just being asleep, which is not what I want from a book, period, but especially not what I want from a book that's a mystery, because even if it's cozy and not like super gritty or violent or whatever, there should at least be some degree of suspense and tension in the book. And this book was definitely more of a vibe of writing about the French countryside and all the food and drink the inspector is having. And it's not really as focused on the mystery and the suspense. The other thing I didn't like about this book, hold on, I need coffee to get through this. The other thing I didn't like about this book was that the main character, who's the inspector, was just way too generic. I know it's very common within the genre to have an inspector that's unattached to any sort of personal relationships or one particular location or anything like that, because that really helps them be able to, go be a loner and move around and do all of these things without fear that somebody's going to try and get revenge by going after the inspector's family. But it just didn't work at all because I had no sense of who this guy was, aside from that he drove a Citroen, which is literally the only personality trait they gave him. And car ownership is not a personality trait, no matter what the commercials say. And I say this, fully owning to the fact that yes, I drive a Subaru, and yes, I am a bisexual, but still, that's not a personality trait. So I was very glad to see that book behind me because I felt like it was honestly a waste of my time to read. But I am continuing on with cozy mysteries that make me much happier, which is the Brother Cadfael series. These are rereads for me. I read these years ago when I was a teenager, and I'm up to book 7, The Sanctuary Sparrow. I'm maybe a quarter of the way through the book at the moment. And I don't remember if this is one of the ones that got made into an episode of the BBC show, because I don't really remember that much about it. So maybe this one didn't get made into the BBC show, but I don't remember the details of this at all. Basically, there's a young juggler who is accused of a crime that he insists he didn't commit. This is one of those rare ones in which the crime was a theft and not a murder, and there is some confusion as to whether the person who was robbed was actually killed within the robbery. It's not a spoiler, turns out he isn't. but the discrepancy in information is also contributing to making this mystery a lot more intriguing. So I'm very much enjoying that. This isn't really like a murder mystery per se, but it's kind of related. I finished reading Unfortunate Ends on Murder and Misadventure in Medieval England by Soren Lilly. This is a fun little, like, you know, novelty-sized book, I would say, that is by the creator of the Weird Medieval Deaths bot on Twitter. Remember back when Twitter was a fun thing and we could enjoy bots that told us, you know, Roger was stabbed to death by clerks in Oxfordshire 1300 or whatever. So this is kind of a greatest hits of the different deaths that the medieval death bot would tweet out. And the author goes into a little bit more detail about the history and the context and stuff. This book is funny. It's exactly what I expected. It's pretty delightful, just like greatest hits of that bot. So if you're interested in just weird history or you were a fan, maybe check this out. Okay. We have another currently reading here, which is Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I'm currently reading this for my romance book club, and I'm enjoying it pretty well so far. It's early days yet, but it is a romance between a woman who is a ghostwriter, and she has a one-night stand with a guy who later turns out to be this sort of like celebrity who was in a famous television show when he was a teenager and is now trying to reinvent himself. And so they meet up again for work because she's been hired to ghostwrite his celebrity memoir, and then realize, oh, they had this prior connection before that. So, you know, enjoying it so far. I like Rachel Lynn Solomon's books. I'm not really far enough into it to say whether I'd recommend it or not yet, but it's enjoyable. We have a few more things. I have a book that I want to get to that I've been trying to read since last month, I think, which is Camp Quilt Bag by Nicole Melleby and AJ Sass. This is a queer middle grade book about a camp. I thought that maybe I was going to get to read this on my camping trip, but no, alas, I didn't. Oh, that reminds me though, on the camping trip there was another book that I wouldn't quite call it a DNF, but I'm like putting it down for now, which is Any Other City by Hazel Jane Plant. This is her second novel. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure if it's just personal taste not liking this one as much, or if it's got a bit of the sophomore slump phenomenon going on because it's her second novel and it isn't quite as good as Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian, which I loved. So I got about halfway through the book. I'm really just not feeling reading it right now, so I'm putting it down. Maybe I'll pick it back up and be in a different frame of mind to enjoy it more, but right now I'm not gonna push it. I'm not gonna try and make myself read something I'm not enjoying. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, we have a few nonfiction books that are all related to sewing and mending, because that's been something I've been trying to teach myself new techniques for. So we have Make, Sew, and Mend by Bernadette Banner. If you're on YouTube at all or historical costuming YouTube, you've probably heard of, if you hear loud noises, it's a movie outside. Bernadette Banner, who is a historical costumer on YouTube, and this is pretty much a sewing encyclopedia of different historical techniques for sewing, for making buttons, for patching clothing, generally speaking, just taking care of garments. This one is really good. I'd say it's probably best for somebody that already has some decent experience with things like sewing and mending. I think you'll get the most out of it. If you're using it as more of a reference book, which is what I was. If you are brand new to sewing or mending, I would highly recommend this book, Mending Life, a handbook for repairing clothes and hearts by Nina and Sonia Montenegro. This book was fantastic. It's kind of a combination of essays and musings about thoughtful consumption of clothing and the ways that we can make our clothes last longer and kind of slow down this fast fashion cycle that we live in by repairing things that we have that have broken. And this is, I think, the best of the books that I've read if you are brand new to sewing or mending, because it's got very beginner-friendly directions that come with very clear and concise illustrations. So in addition to being extremely readable and useful, it also just makes for this very beautiful, in my opinion, design and page layout when you're looking at specific stitches. So these are the 2 books out of the 4 I'm about to tell you about that I would purchase for myself if I was buying them. And then we have 2 books by the same author, Noriko Misumi, which is Mending with Love, Creative Repairs for Your Favorite Things, and Joyful Mending, Visible Repairs for the Perfectly Imperfect Things We Love. These books are kind of 2 books that do exactly the same thing, which is offer some techniques and advice for mending and repairing clothing and other items. I would say that these are good if you have some experience with these types of things already, but you're looking for ideas on how to do more like artistic, visible mending. That's what you're gonna find the most of in this. You're gonna find ways that, you know, mending can add pops of color, embellishments, new textures, new patterns with stitching into your clothing. So this is recommended if you are a little bit more familiar with sewing, although there are directions in the back if you're completely new and you have never done anything like hand stitching before. But I think that it's really useful if you at least have the very basics of sewing down and are looking to get some inspiration for unique mending styles. So still good. Probably wouldn't go out of my way to purchase those 2 for my library, but that's not a knock on the books at all. It's just I would be using these less as a reference piece, if that makes sense, and more of a way to get fun, cool, interesting information. So thank you, library. I think that's pretty much all I have to report in the way of books right now. Sincerely hoping that my luck is gonna get a little bit better with the fiction I've been reading lately, because it's nice to have the Brother Cadfael books to fall back on and reread, but I really would like some of the new books that I pick up to have a bit more of a punch. So that's all I have for you today. If you have read any of these books or you would like to share anything that you have read recently, please feel free to leave a comment down below at the bottom of this video. We can get a conversation and a chat going. I hope your summer reading plans are going well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.